The lonely millionaire went to the blind date in his friend's place, but he didn't imagine that she had also been switched. Before we start the story, leave in the comments which city you're watching from. And at the end, don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10. Enjoy the story, everyone. Nora Sullivan pushed open the door of Seattle's fanciest restaurant with the same energy of someone about to make a monumental mistake. And she was. She just didn't know it yet. The place was exactly the type of establishment that made Nora want to run away. Crystal chandeliers, waiters who looked like they were born in tuxedos, and a menu probably written in Latin just to intimidate normal people. She looked down at her own shoes, the only ones without holes in her closet, and took a deep breath. "Tessa Ramirez, you'll pay for this," she muttered under her breath. 40 minutes earlier, her friend and coworker had called in absolute panic. Her voice sounded like someone being chased by invisible bees. "Nora, I need you. It's a matter of life or extreme embarrassment." "Tessa, what did you do?" "I set up a blind date, and I can't go." Nora closed her eyes. "Why not?" "Because I found out he's a vegetarian." "So what?" "Nora, I work at a community center that has barbecue every Saturday. I post pictures of ribs on my profile. My bio literally says, Barbecue Queen. He's going to cancel me before dessert." It was completely absurd logic, but Tessa had the gift of turning any simple situation into a disaster worthy of a documentary. So, somehow that Nora still didn't fully understand, she ended up agreeing to go in her place. "Just so he doesn't get stood up," Nora repeated to herself as she crossed the dining room. "Just to be polite. Just to—" She stopped. At the reserved table, table 12, as Tessa had specified 8 times, sat a man. But not just any man. He wore a dark suit that probably cost more than Nora's car. He had a jawline so defined it looked like it had been sculpted by someone very angry at stones. And his eyes, heavens, his eyes were the kind that made a person forget their own name. Nora swallowed hard. Right, she thought. The vegetarian is good-looking. Tessa is a coward. On the other side of the table, Elias Montgomery was having the worst day in an already impressive sequence of bad days. 3 hours earlier, his assistant Jade Thompson had stormed into his office with the subtlety of a Category 5 hurricane. "You're going to dinner tonight," she announced, tossing a blazer over his chair. "I'm not going." "Yes, you are." "Jade, I have reports to Elias." She crossed her arms. "The board wants you to seem human. Humans have dinner. Humans socialize. Humans don't spend 18 hours a day staring at spreadsheets like they're poetry." "Spreadsheets can be poetic," Jade blinked. "You just proved my point." The dinner was supposedly for networking, an important connection for Montgomery Industries' public image. Someone from the board had organized it, someone had canceled at the last minute, and now Elias was there, sitting alone, waiting for a person he didn't even know. "I just need to survive 1 hour," he muttered, adjusting his tie for the 5th time. 1 hour, and then I go back to the spreadsheets." That's when he looked up and saw her. A woman was walking toward the table. Brown hair pulled back in a way that seemed too casual to be accidental. A simple dress that somehow drew more attention than all the sparkle in the restaurant. And a look that seemed simultaneously tired and ready for a fight. Elias felt something strange in his chest. It was probably the tie being too tight. Probably. Nora reached the table and smiled, the polite smile she reserved for meetings with bureaucrats. "Hi," she said, pulling out the chair. "You must be the date, the blind date. That's it." Elias frowned. "Blind date?" "Yes, the dinner that was set up." "I thought this was a networking meeting." Nora blinked. "Networking?" They stared at each other. The silence lasted exactly 4 seconds, but felt like an eternity. Nora felt her face heat up. Elias felt his tie tighten even more. "Wait," Nora said slowly. "Who set up this dinner with you?" "Someone from my company's board. I don't even know who, to be honest. My assistant organized everything." "And you came? Why?" "Because apparently I need to seem more human." He paused. Those were the exact words. Nora let out a laugh, a real laugh, not the polite kind. "Let me guess," she said, "you weren't supposed to be here." Elias stared at her. "You weren't supposed to be here either, were you?" The recognition was instant. Nora threw her head back and laughed. Elias, for the first time in months, felt the corners of his mouth rise against his own will. My friend panicked because she found out the guy was a vegetarian, Nora explained, wiping away a tear of laughter. She works at a place that does barbecue. Her social media bio says barbecue queen. She thought she'd get canceled. Canceled for eating meat? Tessa has a very intense relationship with ribs. Elias let out something that could be classified as a restrained laugh. And you came in her place? So the guy wouldn't get stood up, who apparently isn't even you, who also wasn't supposed to be here. Nora took a deep breath. This is a disaster. A complete disaster, Elias agreed. They looked at each other again. So, Nora said, we were both switched. We're at a table that wasn't ours, and neither of us has any idea what's happening. Seems like an accurate summary. And now what? Elias looked at the menu, then at Nora, then at the menu again. Well, he said slowly, we're already here. The restaurant is expensive, and I really need to seem human to someone. Nora raised an eyebrow. Are you suggesting we pretend this catastrophic blind date is real? I'm suggesting we at least eat before we run away. She considered for a moment. Okay, she finally said. But only because I haven't had dinner at a place like this since... Never. I've never had dinner at a place like this. Elias nodded, trying to hide the fact that, for the first time in a long while, he didn't want to be anywhere else. The waiter appeared with the silent grace of a very well-trained ghost. May I bring the appetizers for the couple? We're not a couple, they both said at the same time. The waiter didn't move a muscle. Appetizers for the two separate individuals who coincidentally share a table? That's right, Nora confirmed. Exactly that. When he walked away, Elias leaned forward slightly. Do you always respond to waiters like that? Only when I'm nervous, Nora paused. Or on accidental dates with strangers in expensive restaurants. Does that happen often? It's literally the first time in my life. So you're nervous? Nora opened her mouth to deny it, but something in his look made her stop. There was a kindness there, hidden beneath layers of expensive suit and rigid posture. A genuine curiosity. She sighed. I had a long day, she admitted. A long week. A long month, actually. What do you do? I coordinate a community center in Greenwood. You know, workshops for kids, programs for seniors, neighborhood events. She hesitated. It's important, at least to me. Elias watched her. Her shoulders carried an invisible weight. He recognized it because his own shoulders did the same thing. It sounds important, he said. Really. Nora looked up, surprised by the sincerity. It is, she murmured. But it might end soon. A big company wants to tear down the building to build who knows what. Probably another luxury condo. Something crossed Elias's face, a shadow too quick for Nora to notice. That's complicated, he said, his voice slightly different. Complicated is an elegant word for I'm losing the battle of my life. She laughed again, but this time the sound was different. Tired. Elias felt the urge to say something, anything that could lighten that weight. But before he could speak, the waiter reappeared with two plates that looked like edible works of art. Appetizers, he announced, positioning the plates with surgical precision. For the two separate individuals. Nora looked at her plate, then at Elias, then at the plate again. This is a leaf, she said. A very pretty leaf, but still, a leaf. Elias almost choked. It's a sophisticated appetizer. It's a leaf with drops of something. Balsamic reduction. Drops, Nora repeated, of something. The waiter cleared his throat and disappeared with wounded dignity. Elias stared at her, trying to maintain his composure. Do you always criticize food like that? Only when I'm mentally paying for what I can't really afford. She stabbed the leaf with her fork. But since you're footing the bill for this date, I'll pretend I'm impressed. I appreciate the consideration. You're welcome. They looked at each other for a second longer than necessary, and then, without warning, they both started laughing. Not a polite laugh. A real laugh. The kind that makes your stomach hurt and your eyes water. Nora couldn't remember the last time she had laughed like that. And Elias didn't even know he was still capable of it. The waiter returned with two menus the size of encyclopedias. Nora opened hers and froze. The words seemed to have been written by someone who hated normal people. Do you know what an ancestral root consommé with concept foam is? She asked. Elias looked at his own menu. Concept foam isn't food. It's an existential crisis. Nora stifled a laugh. And look at this one. Carpaccio of marine memories. Memories. Of fish. Maybe the fish had an interesting childhood. She closed the menu firmly. I'm going to order the most normal thing there is, if there is one. Good luck. The waiter reappeared, pen at the ready, expression of someone about to judge every life choice they'd made. Have you decided? Nora pointed to a random line. This one. Excellent choice. And you, sir? Elias hesitated. The same. 2 autumn whispers with truffle tears. The waiter wrote it down without blinking. Harmonious. When he walked away, Nora leaned over the table. We just ordered whispers of autumn with tears. At least the truffles are sad along with us. She laughed, a laugh that made Elias knock over his water glass into his own lap. The liquid spread as if it had a will of its own. Elias froze, looking at the growing stain on his suit pants that probably cost more than Nora's monthly rent. That, he began. Are you okay? Perfectly fine? He grabbed the napkin with a forced calm that didn't convince anyone. This happens all the time. Spilling water on yourself? Demonstrating that I'm human. Nora bit her lip to keep from laughing more. If it's any comfort, you're doing great. Your assistant would be proud. Elias stared at her, napkin still in hand, dignity in tatters. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Immensely. He sighed, but the corners of his mouth betrayed a smile. The autumn whispers arrived. 3 tiny balls on a huge plate, decorated with something that looked like artistic moss. Nora counted the balls. There are 3. Seems like it. 3 for all this. Elias speared one with his fork. Maybe they're very nutritious whispers. Or maybe this restaurant is an elaborate money laundering scheme. He almost choked. Do you always say what you think? Only when I'm nervous, or hungry, or awake. She tasted one ball. Actually, it's good. Not worth the price, but it's good. High standard of evaluation. I coordinate a community center. Our food standard is didn't cause food poisoning. Anything above that is luxury. Elias watched her as she ate, the relaxed manner, the brutal honesty, the complete lack of interest in impressing him. It was refreshing and slightly terrifying. Why do you do it? He asked. The community center. Nora paused, fork in the air. Because someone needs to do it. That's not a real answer. She studied him for a moment, as if deciding how much of herself to reveal to a handsome stranger in an absurd restaurant. I grew up in a neighborhood like that, she finally said. Without many resources, community centers were everything. Art workshops, homework help, a safe place when home wasn't. She shrugged. I wanted to be that place for other kids. Elias said nothing, but something in his look changed, a softness that wasn't there before. And you? Nora turned the tables. Why do you need to seem more human? Because apparently I scare people. You don't scare me. You're clearly an exception, or you're not as scary as you think. They stared at each other. The restaurant seemed to get quieter, the other tables more distant. Nora felt something strange in her chest, a curiosity that didn't ask for permission. What did you dream of being, she asked, before you became? What you became? Elias hesitated. The question caught him off guard, like a gentle punch. Architect, he admitted. I wanted to design buildings that made people feel at home. And what happened? The family business happened. Nora tilted her head. You don't seem happy about it. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. The silence stretched between them, not uncomfortable, but charged. Elias felt the armor he'd worn for years develop cracks he didn't know how to fix. The community center, he said, changing the subject. You mentioned it might close. What's happening? Nora sighed, and the lightness of the previous moment evaporated. A corporation wants the land, expansion plans, urban development, the usual. They have lawyers, money, political connections. She played with her napkin. And we have hope, which doesn't pay bills. Have you tried to fight it? I'm trying. There's a public hearing in a few weeks. I'm going to present a revitalization project I developed with the community. She laughed, but the sound was bitter. They'll probably ignore it, like they ignored all the other times. Elias felt his stomach sink. Something about her story bothered him in a way he couldn't fully identify. What's the name of the company? Montgomery something. Industries, I think. Nora shrugged. All these conglomerates have similar names. The world stopped. Elias felt the air leave his lungs. His face must have changed because Nora frowned. Are you okay? You went pale. I'm fine. His voice came out strange. Just the autumn whisper didn't sit well. Do you want water? No, He tried to smile, failed miserably. I just need a moment. Montgomery Industries, his company. The expansion project he had signed without reading properly, trusting the board's reports. The building that would be demolished. Her community center. The waiter chose that moment to reappear. Dessert? Nora looked at Elias, worried. I think we'll skip it. As you wish. When he walked away, Nora leaned in. Hey, are you sure you're okay? Elias stared at her. This extraordinary woman who fought for the impossible, who laughed at pretentious menus, who made him want to be better than he was. This woman whose life he was about to destroy without knowing it. I'm fine, he lied. And for the first time that night, Nora didn't believe him. The cold Seattle air greeted them like an elegant slap. Nora crossed her arms and Elias pretended he wasn't shivering inside his water-soaked suit. They were at the restaurant door, and neither of them moved. So, Nora said. So, Elias repeated. The silence stretched for 3 seconds that felt like 3 hours. It was an interesting date, she tried, considering neither of us was supposed to be here. Technically, it was the most honest date I've ever had. How so? No expectations, no prepared lies, no script, he shrugged. Just 2 substitutes eating autumn whispers. Nora laughed. When you put it that way, it sounds almost poetic. Poetic and expensive. Very expensive. They looked at each other again. The streetlight cast strange shadows on Elias's face, and Nora noticed he had almost invisible freckles on his nose. Details she shouldn't be noticing. Details she couldn't stop noticing. I should, she began. Yeah, me too. Neither finished the sentence. Elias's phone buzzed in his pocket. He ignored it. It buzzed again and again. On the 4th time he sighed and looked at the screen. 7 messages from Jade. The GPS says you're still at the restaurant. It's been an hour and a half already. Elias Montgomery, are you socializing? Who are you and what did you do with my boss? If you don't answer in 30 seconds, I'm going to assume you were abducted. 20 seconds. I'm calling the police. He typed quickly. I'm alive. Don't call the police. The response was instant. Proof of life. Send a photo. Nora watched his expression change from irritation to resignation. Problem? My assistant. She tracks my phone. That's slightly scary. She says it's preventive care. Preventive care is vitamin C. That's surveillance. Elias put away his phone. Jade has a very particular definition of professional boundaries. Apparently. The phone buzzed one more time. Elias didn't even look. She's going to continue, Nora observed. Until I get home, probably. You have an interesting life. I have an assistant with control issues. It's not the same thing. Nora took a step toward the street, then stopped. Elias made a motion to say goodbye, but the words got stuck. The space between them seemed to shrink without anyone moving. Hey, Nora said, her voice lower. Thank you. For the night, for the autumn whispers, for pretending this wasn't completely strange. It was completely strange. I know. But it was a good strange. Elias stared at her. She was too close now, or maybe he had moved closer without realizing it. The wind messed up her hair, and he had to fight the urge to brush it away from her face. Nora. Yes? He opened his mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. The right words didn't exist, or they existed, but he didn't have the courage to say them. How to explain that the night had been the best in years? How to say that she made him feel things he was sure he had permanently shut off? How to confess that his company was about to destroy everything she loved? Good luck, he finally said. With the community center, with the hearing. Her eyes lost some of their brightness. That wasn't what she expected to hear. Thank you, she murmured. The moment shattered like thin glass. Nora stepped back, then another step. I'm going to that way. She pointed vaguely to the left. Right, I'm going the other way. Right. Neither moved. We're not going, Nora observed. Seems like we're not. Why aren't we going? Elias swallowed hard. I don't know. It was a lie. He knew exactly why. And from the way she looked at him, Nora did too. But sometimes the truth is too heavy for a restaurant sidewalk at 10 at night. Bye, Elias, she said, using his name for the first time. The sound did something strange to his chest. Bye, Nora. She turned and started walking. He stood still, watching, unable to move. 10 steps, 20, 30. Nora didn't look back, and Elias didn't call her back. On the opposite sidewalk, far enough not to be seen, Nora finally stopped. She took a deep breath. The cold air filled her lungs, but didn't erase the warm feeling that refused to go away. A smile appeared. Small, involuntary, kind of silly. Well, she murmured to herself. A stranger in a ridiculous restaurant, a date that shouldn't have happened, a night that shouldn't have meant anything. So why couldn't she stop smiling? Nora shook her head and kept walking. She'd probably never see him again. Didn't even know his last name, didn't have his phone number. It was just a funny story to tell Tessa tomorrow. That's all. It had to be just that. On the other side of town, Elias got in his car and sat in the parking lot for 5 whole minutes. His phone buzzed nonstop. Jade, obviously. He ignored it. Something had changed that night. Something he couldn't name, but felt like a crack in concrete. Small, almost invisible, but impossible to ignore. Nora Sullivan, a woman who laughed at expensive menus and fought for the impossible and looked at him as if she saw something beyond the suit and the title. And he was about to destroy everything she loved. Elias started the car and drove home, the weight of guilt already forming in his chest. When he got to the apartment, the first thing he did was open his laptop and look for the expansion project documents. The name was there, in bold letters, Greenwood Community Center, scheduled for demolition, and right below it, his own digital signature. The laptop screen glowed in the dark apartment like a silent interrogation. Elias had been sitting on the couch for 40 minutes, staring at the same document without blinking. His signature, his name, his company, Nora's community center. This can't be right, he murmured, scrolling down the page. But it was. Every line, every paragraph, every legal clause confirmed the same thing. He had approved the demolition of the Greenwood Community Center 3 months ago. He didn't even remember signing it. There were so many documents per week. Dozens, sometimes hundreds. The board sent them, he approved them, the company moved forward. That's how it worked. That's how it had always worked. Until now. Elias closed his eyes and saw Nora's face. The way she talked about the center, as if it were an extension of herself. The passion in her voice, the exhaustion in her shoulders, the stubborn hope that refused to disappear. And he was destroying all of that with a signature he didn't even remember making. The intercom rang at 11:30 at night. Elias frowned. Nobody visited without warning. Nobody visited, period. Mr. Montgomery? The doorman's voice sounded hesitant. Miss Thompson is coming up. I didn't authorize. She said it was a medical emergency. What medical, Emmer? The door opened before he finished the sentence. Jade entered like a hurricane in pajamas and indignation, holding her phone like a weapon. You're alive, she exclaimed. Obviously. Then why didn't you answer my messages? Because there were 11. In 1 hour. 14, I counted. She stopped in the middle of the room, looking around. Why are you in the dark? Why are you looking at your laptop like it just ended your marriage? I'm not married. Exactly. The laptop ended a marriage that doesn't even exist. That's impressive. Elias sighed. Jade, what are you doing here? Checking if my boss had a nervous breakdown after socializing for the first time in 3 years. She threw herself on the couch beside him. And apparently I was right, because you look like someone who just found out Santa Claus doesn't exist. Santa Claus doesn't exist. See? Nervous breakdown. Jade peeked at the laptop screen. Greenwood Community Center, she read aloud. Scheduled for demolition. Digital signature of. She stopped. Oh. Yeah, you signed this, apparently. Do you remember signing it? No. Jade leaned back on the couch, processing. So you approved the destruction of a community center without knowing it, and now you're having an existential crisis at 11 at night? 11:30. The precision doesn't help Elias. He rubbed his face with his hands. The woman from dinner, Nora, she works there, coordinates the place, has been fighting to save it for months. Jade's eyes widened. Wait, the mysterious woman from the accidental blind date works at the place you're demolishing? Yes. The date I practically forced you to go to? Yes. She was silent for exactly 2 seconds. This is too dramatic even for me. Jade pointed at the laptop. See? Even the computer is dramatic. It could have shown any document, but it chose this one specifically. I searched for this document, Jade. Details. Elias got up and went to the window. The city sparkled below. Millions of lights, millions of lives, millions of decisions that affected people he would never meet. How many times have I done this? He asked, more to himself than to Jade. How many times have I signed something without reading it properly? How many lives have I affected without knowing? Do you want the honest answer or the one that helps you sleep better? The honest one. Probably many. Jade got up and went to him. But that doesn't mean you're a horrible person. It means the system is a mess and nobody can read 300 pages of legalese per day. That's not an excuse. It's not, but it's context. Elias turned to face her. I need to fix this. How? I don't know yet. The board won't like it. I know. Margot Pierce definitely won't like it. I know. Jade crossed her arms. Are you willing to pick a fight with the entire board because of a woman you met 4 hours ago? Elias thought about Nora, about her smile, her laugh, the way she looked at him as if she saw something beyond the CEO, beyond the last name, beyond the money. It's not just because of her, he said. It's because it's right. But she helps. She helps. Jade sighed. Okay, if we're going to do this, we need a plan. You can't just cancel the project out of nowhere. There are contracts, investors, schedules. I know. And you can't tell her who you are. Not yet. She'll think you were getting close on purpose. Elias hadn't thought of that. His stomach sank. She's going to hate me. Probably, but maybe less if you fix things before telling her. And how do I fix it? Jade grabbed the laptop and started typing. First, we find out everything about this project. Who approved it, who profits, what the loopholes are. Then, we find an alternative that makes financial sense. The board only understands money. And if there's no alternative, there's always an alternative. You just have to be creative. She looked at him. You're still the CEO. Your voice carries weight. Use it. At 2 a.m, the apartment was covered with printed papers, notes, and empty coffee cups. Jade had left an hour ago, but Elias couldn't sleep. He was looking at a photo of the community center on the website. Children smiling, elderly people playing cards, a colorful mural painted on the outside wall. It was everything his company wasn't. Chaotic, imperfect, full of life. And he was about to erase it from the map. His phone buzzed. A message from Jade. Found something interesting. The revitalization project that City Hall ignored? It was filed by someone named Nora Sullivan. It's been archived for weeks. Elias felt his heart tighten. She was fighting. Alone. Against him. And didn't even know it. Elias Montgomery couldn't concentrate for 3 days. And that was a problem, because concentration was basically the only thing he knew how to do. 9 o'clock meeting. Thought about Nora. 11 o'clock report. Thought about Nora. 1 o'clock lunch. Didn't eat lunch because he was thinking about Nora. Are you okay? Jade asked for the 10th time that morning. I'm fine. You've been staring at the same page for 20 minutes. I'm analyzing. It's a restaurant menu. Someone sent it by mistake. Elias looked down. It really was a menu, from an Italian restaurant he'd never heard of. I knew that, he lied. Jade crossed her arms. You need to resolve this situation. What situation? The situation where you turned into a lovesick corporate zombie. I'm not in love. You sighed 11 times during the budget meeting. I counted. It was a long meeting. It was about spreadsheets. You love spreadsheets. Elias had no arguments. At 4 p.m, he did something he had never done before. He left the office without warning. Jade nearly had a heart attack when she saw the empty chair. The Greenwood Community Center was 20 minutes away by car, in a neighborhood that Elias probably would never have visited under normal circumstances. The streets were narrower, the buildings lower, and there was a different energy in the air. Less rush. More life. He parked across the street and watched. The center was an old red brick building, with a colorful mural on the side showing children holding hands around the world. The windows were open, and sounds of laughter escaped to the sidewalk. Elias took a deep breath and crossed the street. The inside was chaotic in the best possible way. In one room, children painted on makeshift easels. In another, a group of elderly people played dominoes with the intensity of a championship final. In the hallway, teenagers rehearsed a choreography that seemed to involve a lot of arm movements and little coordination. Nobody wore suits. Nobody seemed stressed. Nobody checked their phone every 30 seconds. It was like another planet. Are you lost, young man? Elias looked down. A girl of approximately 7 years old stared at him with the authority of a miniature CEO. Not exactly, he said. You look lost. And serious. Are you the serious computer guy? What? The The teacher said a serious computer guy was coming to fix the internet. She assessed him from top to bottom. You look serious, and you smell like an office. Elias didn't know if he should be offended. I'm not the computer guy. Then why are you here? Good question. I'm getting to know the place, he tried. Why? Because someone told me it was special. The girl considered the answer. It really is special. There's a snack at 4:30. Do you want to stay for the snack? Elias ended up staying for the snack. It wasn't exactly what he had planned, but the girl, whose name was Sophia and who had very strong opinions about everything, basically dragged him to the activities room. The snack was cookies with juice. The cookies were clearly homemade and slightly burnt. The juice was from a box. It was the best meal Elias had had in weeks. Did you like it? Sophia asked. Very much. Miss Martha made them. She burns everything, but we pretend it's good because she's nice. That's very kind. It's strategy. If we complain, she stops making them, and burnt cookies are better than no cookies. Elias laughed. A real laugh, the kind that came from deep down. You're very smart, Sophia. I know. That's when he saw her. Nora was in the next room, helping a group of children with a science project that involved a lot of cardboard and even more tape. She wore a center t-shirt and jeans, her hair pulled back in a messy bun, and was laughing at something one of the children had said. Elias froze. She was even more beautiful like this, in her element, surrounded by the chaos she loved, completely unaware she was being watched. His heart did something strange. A leap, a stumble, something hearts normally shouldn't do. Do you know Nora? Sophia asked, following his gaze. Sort of. She's the best. She taught me how to make a baking soda volcano. It made a huge mess. Sophia smiled at the memory. It was amazing. Elias kept watching. Nora crouched down to be at a child's level, explaining something with infinite patience. Then she got up and ran to help an elderly person who had knocked over their domino pieces. Then she went back to the science project, all in a continuous flow of movement and care. It was exhausting just to watch, and she did that every day, by choice, out of love. Elias looked around, the peeling walls that someone had tried to brighten up with drawings, the mismatched chairs, the old but functional equipment. It was imperfect. It was real. It was everything his life wasn't. His apartment was spotless and empty. His office was efficient and cold. His meetings were productive and soulless. And here, in a building his company wanted to demolish, there was more life in one room than he had experienced in years. The guilt came back with full force. Serious guy? Elias looked at Sophia. Yes? Why are you sad? I'm not sad. Yes, you are. Your eyes got different. Children noticed everything. I just realized something, he said. Good thing or bad thing? I still don't know. Nora lifted her head and looked in his direction. Elias felt panic rise up his spine. She was going to recognize him. She was going to ask questions. She was going to find out everything. But before their eyes met, he turned and walked quickly toward the exit. Hey, serious guy, Sophia shouted behind him. Are you coming back? Elias stopped at the door. He looked back one last time. Nora was standing now, looking toward the hallway with a confused expression, as if she had sensed something. He didn't answer Sophia. He just left, his heart heavy, his decision made. He was going to fix this, whatever it took, even if she never knew it was him. The meeting room at Montgomery Industries had floor-to-ceiling windows, furniture that cost more than cars, and an emotional temperature below zero. Elias was sitting at the head of the table, surrounded by 12 board members who looked at him like sharks evaluating prey. Margot Pierce occupied the chair to his right. Strategic position, calculated smile. The Greenwood project is on schedule, she announced, going through the slides. Demolition is scheduled for 6 weeks from now. Everything is planned. Elias took a deep breath. I'd like to propose a review. The silence that followed could freeze coffee. Review? Margot raised a perfectly drawn eyebrow. The project was approved 3 months ago. By you, by the way. I know, but I recently visited the site and... Visited the site? Another board member, a man named Henderson, leaned forward. Why? To understand the real impact of the demolition. Margot let out a short laugh. Elias, we have impact reports. They were done by professionals. Reports don't show children learning to paint. They don't show elderly people who depend on that space to socialize. They don't show... Sentimentality, Margot cut him off. That's what you're describing, and sentimentality doesn't pay dividends. The vote was quick and brutal, 10 in favor of demolition. 2 against, Elias and a woman named Chen, who seemed as surprised as he was to be on the same side. The decision has been made, Margot said, closing her folder. The eviction notice will be sent today. Elias felt his stomach sink. Margot, if we could at least postpone. Postponing costs money. Money that shareholders expect to see earning returns. She stood up, adjusting her impeccable blazer. You're the CEO, Elias, but the board governs. Remember that. She left, and the others followed, leaving Elias alone in Seattle's most expensive meeting room. Jade appeared at the door 2 minutes later. I heard through the wall, she said. The walls are soundproof. I put my glass against them. Old technique, very effective. Elias almost laughed. Almost. The notice is going to be sent today, he said. I know. She's going to receive it today. I know. And I couldn't stop it. Jade sat in the chair next to him. You tried. That counts for something. It doesn't count for her. On the other side of town, Nora Sullivan was having a strange morning. Not strange in a bad way, just different. She had woken up thinking about the dinner from a week ago, about the mysterious man who had shown up at the wrong table, about his smile when she criticized the autumn whispers. And for some reason, she couldn't stop. You're smiling at your coffee, Tessa observed, entering the center's small kitchen. I'm not. Yes, you are. It's weird. You never smile before 10. Nora took a sip, trying to seem normal. I'm just in a good mood. Why? Did something happen? No. Liar. Did something happen at the dinner you went to in my place? Nothing happened. Tessa narrowed her eyes. Nora Sullivan, you met someone. I didn't. You met someone. Tessa, for the love of... Who is he? What's he like? Did you exchange numbers? Are you going to see him again? Nora sighed. We didn't exchange numbers. I don't know his last name, and I'll probably never see him again. That's the saddest and most romantic thing I've ever heard. It's not romantic, it's just a funny story. A funny story that makes you smile at your coffee at 8 in the morning. Nora had no arguments. Sophia appeared in the kitchen doorway, dragging a backpack that seemed to weigh more than her. Nora, did the serious guy come back? Nora frowned. What serious guy? The serious computer guy. Except he wasn't the computer guy. He came yesterday, ate cookies with me, and then ran away. Tessa and Nora exchanged glances. What was he like? Nora asked. Tall, in a suit, smelled like an office. Sophia thought, and he kept looking at you from far away. I think he likes you. Nora's heart gave a leap she preferred to ignore. It must have been some inspector, she said, more to herself. Inspectors don't eat burnt cookies, Tessa observed. Maybe he was a hungry inspector. Sophia shrugged. He said someone told him this place was special, and that he wanted to get to know it. Nora felt something strange in her chest, a foolish hope that made no sense. It couldn't be him. There was no way it could be him. Could there? The mailman arrived at 11:43. Nora was in the middle of an origami workshop when Tessa appeared at the door, her face pale, holding an envelope. Nora, she said, her voice strange, you need to see this. The envelope had the Montgomery Industries logo. Inside, a 3-page letter that basically said, you have 60 days to vacate the building. Nora read it once, twice, 3 times. The words didn't change. No, she murmured. No, no, no. Tessa came closer. Nora, I filed the project. I did everything right. Her voice broke. For a moment, just a moment, Nora Sullivan collapsed. Her shoulders curved, her eyes filled, and the weight of months of fighting fell all at once. Tessa hugged her without saying anything. It lasted exactly 30 seconds. Then Nora pulled away, wiped her eyes, and took a deep breath. Okay, she said, her voice firm again. Okay. Nora, you don't have to. The public hearing is in 2 weeks. We still have time. But the notice, it's a piece of paper. Papers can be contested. Nora picked up the envelope and placed it on the table. They want a fight? They'll get a fight. Tessa watched her, impressed. What are you going to do? Nora smiled, not a happy smile, but a determined one. I'm going to make them regret underestimating Greenwood. Tessa tried to help the only way she knew how. You can do it, Nora. You're strong. You're a social justice warrior. Nora stared at her. What was that? A motivational speech. It was terrible. I know, but it's what I've got. Despite everything, Nora laughed. And somewhere in the city, Elias Montgomery looked out the office window, not knowing he had just declared war on the only woman who had made his heart beat differently in years. The Seattle City Hall auditorium hadn't seen this many people since the paid parking controversy in 2019. Every seat was occupied, people squeezed into the hallways, and someone had brought a sign that said, "Greenwood Lives," in red letters that seemed to have been painted with anger. Nora Sullivan was backstage, holding her notes as if they were a life vest. "You're looking green," Tessa observed. "Thanks for the support." "It's a pretty green. Matches the nervousness." Nora took a deep breath. 2 weeks of preparation, sleepless nights, a revitalization project she had rewritten 7 times until it was perfect. Everything came down to the next 15 minutes. "What if I forget everything?" she asked. "You won't forget. What if I faint? Then it'll be much more memorable." "Tessa, I'm trying to help." The auditorium buzzed with conversation. Greenwood residents occupied the front rows, elderly people who had been coming to the center for decades, parents with children in their laps, teenagers who had learned to dance in Nora's workshops. In the back row, a group in dark suits stood out like ink stains on white paper. Miss Martha, the lady with the burnt cookies, nudged her husband. "Look at that. The money crowd arrived. These rich folks think we're scenery," he grumbled. "Poor neighborhood decoration." "Expensive decoration, at least. Look at the size of those watches." A woman in the front row turned around. The gray-haired one looks like he swallowed a lemon. "That's their standard. They call it a business expression. Looks like constipation." Muffled laughter ran through the rows. The hearing mediator, a man named Peterson, who seemed to have been born bored, banged his gavel. "Order, please. We will begin the public hearing on the future of the Greenwood Community Center." He adjusted his glasses. First presentation, Nora Sullivan representing the community. Nora walked to the podium. Her legs were shaking. Her heart was racing. 200 pairs of eyes watched her. She looked at her notes, then at the audience, then at her notes again, and then she did something she hadn't planned. She put the papers in her pocket. "I prepared a speech," she began, her voice firmer than expected. It had statistics, financial projections, impact studies, all very technical and impressive. Pause. "But you didn't come here for numbers. You came because Greenwood is your home." A murmur of approval ran through the room. 12 years ago, I was a child who had nowhere to go after school. My mother worked 2 shifts. My father had left, and the community center gave me a place." She looked at Miss Martha. "It gave me people who cared. It gave me hope that I could be more than my circumstances." Miss Martha discreetly wiped her eyes. "Today, 300 children use our space every week. 80 elderly people participate in activities. 20 teenagers found jobs through our programs." Nora took a deep breath. "This doesn't show up in profit reports, but it shows up in transformed lives." She pulled out a tablet and projected images on the screen behind her. "This is the revitalization project I developed with the community. We're not asking for money. We're only asking that you don't destroy what took us decades to build." The images showed the renovated center, vibrant colors, expanded spaces, community garden, technology area for young people. "We can make this work. We just need a chance." Nora fell silent. The silence lasted 3 seconds. Then the audience exploded in applause. Peterson banged his gavel repeatedly. "Order, order." It took a full minute for the noise to die down. "Impressive presentation, Miss Sullivan." He consulted his list. "Now, the floor goes to the representatives of Montgomery Industries." The atmosphere changed instantly. Margot Pierce stood up from the back row, smoothing her blazer as if preparing for battle. She walked to the podium with the confidence of someone who had already won before starting. "Thank you, Mr. Peterson." She smiled, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Miss Sullivan's presentation was emotional, moving even. The word sounded like an insult, but business doesn't run on emotion, it runs on numbers. Margot projected her own slides. "The Greenwood land is valued at $12 million. The development project will bring 500 jobs to the region. Tax revenue will increase by—" "Taxes don't hug children," someone shouted from the audience. "Order." Peterson banged the gavel. Margot continued, unmoved. "The revitalization project presented by Miss Sullivan is admirable, but financially unfeasible. Who would pay for the renovation? Who would cover the operational costs? Hope doesn't pay bills. Nora felt her stomach sink. Montgomery Industries is committed to Seattle's progress, Margot concluded. And progress, sometimes, means leaving the past behind. She returned to her seat, leaving a heavy silence in the air. Peterson cleared his throat. We will now open for questions from the City Council. If I may, Margot interrupted, I'd like to present our final documentation. Signed contracts, pending approvals, demolition schedule. She handed a thick folder to the mediator. I believe this concludes the discussion. Nora felt the floor disappear. The residents murmured, restless. Miss Martha was crying openly now. Tessa gripped Nora's hand tightly. The documentation appears to be in order, Peterson said, leafing through the pages. If there are no formal objections? It's not over, Nora said, her voice firm despite the desperation. The community has the right to respond. We have lawyers reviewing the clauses. We have... Miss Sullivan. Margot interrupted her with false kindness. You fought well, but some battles simply cannot be won. The auditorium fell silent. Nora looked at the faces around her, hope turning into defeat, faith draining away. This was it. They had lost. Then the back doors opened with a crash. And Elias Montgomery walked in. Elias Montgomery was standing at the auditorium entrance, and the world seemed to have frozen around him. 200 heads turned at the same time. Murmurs exploded like sparks. Margot Pierce went so pale she looked like she had seen a ghost, which, in a way, was true, the CEO himself. There, without warning. This wasn't on the schedule, she hissed to the lawyer beside her. I know. Why is he here? I don't know. In Elias's pocket, his phone buzzed. A message from Jade. I just saw from GPS that you entered City Hall. What are you doing? He ignored it. Another message. Elias Montgomery. If you're about to do something dramatic, at least warn me so I can prepare the press release. Ignored again. Third message. Act natural. For God's sake, act natural. He almost laughed. Natural was the last thing he could be at that moment. Nora Sullivan couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything but stare at the man walking down the center aisle of the auditorium as if the entire place belonged to him. It was him, the man from dinner, the man with the autumn whispers, the man who had made her laugh for the first time in months and then disappeared without a trace. And he was Montgomery, Tessa whispered beside her, eyes wide. Nora, he's a Montgomery, the Montgomery. The floor seemed to disappear. The serious computer guy, the man Sophia said watched her from afar. The stranger who wanted to get to know the place because someone said it was special. It was him. It had been him all along. And now he was there, walking toward the stage, probably to deliver the final blow. Elias felt every pair of eyes like needles. The walk to the front of the auditorium seemed to last forever. His shoes made a ridiculously loud sound in the silence. Someone coughed. A child asked, Mommy, who's the man? And the mother told her to be quiet. Margot recovered from her surprise and intercepted his path. Elias, she said quietly, smiling for the cameras while speaking through her teeth. What do you think you're doing? My job. Your job is to support the board. My job is to lead the company, which, as far as I know, still has my name on it. He walked around her and kept going. Margot stood there, mouth open, not knowing how to react. In the audience, Miss Martha nudged her husband. Think they're gonna fight? I hope so. I brought popcorn. You brought popcorn to a public hearing? It's been in my pocket since the movies yesterday. Elias reached the podium. Peterson, the mediator, looked like he was about to have a nervous breakdown. Mr. Montgomery, this is a public hearing. You can't just... I'm the CEO of the company involved in the dispute, Elias said calmly. I have the right to speak. Well, technically, but the protocol? The protocol allows interested parties to speak. I'm an interested party. Peterson looked at his papers as if they could save him. They couldn't. Proceed, he sighed. Elias turned to the audience and met Nora's eyes. She was in the third row, pale, lips parted, a mixture of shock and something else. Something that looked like betrayal. He swallowed hard. Busca na web. My name is Elias Montgomery, he began, his voice echoing through the auditorium. I'm the CEO of Montgomery Industries, and 3 months ago, I signed a document authorizing the demolition of the Greenwood Community Center. Murmurs of anger ran through the room. I signed it, he continued, without reading it properly, without visiting the site, without knowing the people who would be affected. Because it was just another paper in a pile of papers, and I had more important things to do. Nora frowned, confused. That was a mistake I intend to correct. The silence now was different, tense, expectant. Margot stood up. Elias, the board already voted. The board voted based on incomplete information, he interrupted her. Information that I, as CEO, should have questioned. I didn't question it. The responsibility is mine. Nora didn't know what to feel. Anger? He was responsible for all of this. The man behind the faceless corporation. The villain of the story she had been trying to fight for months. Confusion? He seemed genuinely sorry. He seemed human. Hope? No. She refused to feel hope. Hope was too dangerous. Tessa squeezed her hand. Nora, breathe. I am breathing. You're turning purple. Purple is the new color of self-control. Elias continued. I visited the community center last week, not as CEO, not as a company representative, just as someone wanting to understand. He paused. A 7-year-old girl offered me burnt cookies and explained that the strategy was to pretend they were good so Miss Martha wouldn't stop making them. Surprised laughter ran through the audience. Miss Martha wiped her eyes, smiling. At that moment, Elias said, I realized something that reports will never show. That place has soul. It has history. It has people who depend on it, not out of convenience, but out of real necessity. He turned to Margot. Progress doesn't mean destroying what works. Progress means finding ways to grow without crushing whoever's in the way. Margot crossed her arms. Pretty words, but words don't change signed contracts. No, but I can. Elias's phone buzzed again. What are you going to do? Jade, clearly panicking. He typed quickly, trust me. That's the phrase that precedes all disasters in history. He put away his phone and turned his attention back to the audience. I came here to what exactly? Margot interrupted him, her voice sharp. To sabotage your own company? To throw away millions in profits because of sentimentality? To do what's right. What's right doesn't pay dividends. Not everything needs to pay dividends, Margot. The tension between them was almost palpable. The audience watched as if it were a tennis match in slow motion. Nora stood up. She hadn't planned it. Her body simply decided it couldn't stay sitting anymore. Wait, she said, her voice cutting through the silence. You're the man from the dinner. Elias stared at her. Nora, you knew. The accusation weighted each syllable. You knew who I was, what I did, and you didn't say anything. I didn't know, not that night. But you found out later, and even then you didn't say anything. I wanted to fix it before. Before what? Before I found out that the man who made me laugh was the same one destroying everything I love? The entire auditorium held its breath. Elias came down from the stage and walked to her. He stopped 2 steps away, too close and too far at the same time. I was wrong, he said, low enough for only her to hear. I was wrong not to tell you. I was wrong to sign without thinking. I was wrong in 1,000 things I can't change. Then why are you here? Because some things I can still fix. His eyes were sincere, desperately sincere. And Nora hated the fact that even now, even knowing who he was, a part of her still wanted to believe. Peterson cleared his throat. If we could, resume order. Nobody paid attention. Mr. Montgomery, Margot said, her voice icy. If you don't have anything concrete to offer, I suggest you stop wasting everyone's time. Elias turned to her and smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of someone about to flip a table. Actually, Margot, I have something very concrete. He returned to the podium and pulled a folder from his jacket. I've spent the last 2 weeks reviewing contracts, consulting lawyers, and finding viable alternatives. He opened the folder. What I have here is a proposal that will change everything. Margot went pale. What proposal? Elias looked at Nora, then at the audience, then at the mediator. A proposal that needs to be heard. He placed the documents on Peterson's table, and the entire auditorium leaned forward, waiting. Peterson leafed through the documents with trembling hands. The entire auditorium seemed to lean forward, as if gravity had changed direction. Margot Pierce was tapping her foot on the floor, a nervous tic she would never admit to having. This is ridiculous, she whispered to the lawyer beside her. He can't just show up with a folder and change everything. Technically, Mrs. Pierce, he is the CEO. I know he's the CEO. I helped put him there. So technically. Shut up. Elias cleared his throat and took the microphone back. What's in these documents, he said, his voice firm, is a proposal to reallocate funds. Instead of demolishing the Greenwood Community Center, Montgomery Industries will finance it. The silence lasted half a second. Finance it how? Someone shouted from the audience. Fully. 100% of the revitalization project developed by Miss Sullivan. Another half-second of silence, then chaos. Did he say 100%? Miss Martha stood up so fast that her chair flew back and hit her husband's knee. "Ow, woman, don't complain. The man said 100%. I heard, but my knee didn't need to participate in the celebration." In the back row, a group of teenagers started clapping rhythmically. One of them started a shout of "Greenwood" that spread like a virus. Within seconds, half the auditorium was chanting along. Miss Martha's husband, the same one who had brought popcorn, threw what was left up in the air like confetti. "I knew this popcorn would be good for something. Good for something. You said it was left over from the movies." And it was, but now it's victory popcorn. Peterson banged his gavel with the energy of someone trying to put out a fire with a matchstick. "Order, please, we need order." Nobody cared about order. Sophia, who had appeared from some mysterious place, as children tend to do, climbed on a chair and started jumping. "We won! We won!" "Sophia, get down from there!" shouted a woman who was probably her mother. "No, I'm celebrating." "You can celebrate on the floor." "Celebrating on the floor isn't real celebrating." Margot crossed the aisle and stopped in front of Elias, her eyes flashing. "You can't do this," she said through her teeth. "The board approved the demolition. There are contracts, investors, schedules. There are also fund reallocation clauses for community development," Elias responded calmly. "Article 7, Section 3, Paragraph 12 of the corporate bylaws. As CEO, I have the authority to activate these clauses unilaterally." Margot blinked. "You memorized the bylaws?" "I memorized the useful parts." "This is a coup. This is leadership. Similar words, different meanings." Jade, who had managed to get into the auditorium during the chaos, appeared beside Elias holding her phone like a weapon. "Press release in 3, 2, 1, sent." She smiled. "Done. Now it's official, and it's on all the news sites." Margot turned purple. "You did what?" "My job, Mrs. Pierce. They call it public relations." In the middle of the crowd, Nora Sullivan still hadn't moved. Tears were running down her face without her noticing. Around her, people were celebrating, shouting, hugging each other, but she seemed to be inside a bubble of silence. The center was saved. Her project would be funded. Years of fighting, sleepless nights, doors slammed in her face, ignored emails, lost hearings. It had all been worth it. And the person responsible was the man she had met at an accidental dinner. The same man who had spilled water on his own lap trying to look confident. The same man who 2 weeks ago was her faceless enemy. She didn't know if she wanted to hug him or send him to hell. Maybe both. Tessa appeared out of nowhere and hugged her hard enough to break ribs. "Nora, we did it!" "Tessa, can't breathe." "That's secondary. We're saved." "I'm going to pass out." Tessa released her, but only a little. "You're crying," she observed. "I'm not." "Your face is wet. It's emotional sweat." "That doesn't exist. It does now." Elias managed to get through the crowd and stopped in front of Nora. The world around them continued celebrating, but between the two of them, the air became strangely still. "Hi," he said. "Hi," she responded. Pause. "So," Nora continued, wiping her face with the back of her hand, "you just saved my community center." "Technically, I canceled the destruction I'd authorized myself. It's more undoing a mistake than saving." Still. They stared at each other. Tessa, realizing she was in the way, moved away discreetly, but not before giving Nora a thumbs up that was anything but discreet. "I'm still angry with you," Nora said. "I know. You lied. I omitted. It's different." "No, it's not. You're right. It's not." Nora crossed her arms. "And now, what happens? Now we work together on the revitalization project. If you want. Work together. Yes, you and me. That's the idea." "The man who almost destroyed my center, and the woman who almost had a nervous breakdown trying to save it?" Elias shrugged. "When you put it that way, it sounds like a terrible idea." "Because it probably is." "Probably." Pause. "But I have good ideas for the technology area," he added, "and you clearly need someone who knows how to use spreadsheets." Nora almost laughed. "Almost. Are you trying to convince me with spreadsheets? Is it working?" "Maybe." Miss Martha appeared out of nowhere and hugged them both at the same time. "You two, my heroes, come have dinner at my house." "Miss Martha, you don't need to. I insist. I'll make my special cake." Elias and Nora exchanged glances. "Is the cake burnt too?" Elias whispered. "Everything she makes is burnt," Nora whispered back. "It's a tradition." "I see. Pretend it's good?" "Survival strategy." Miss Martha dragged them toward the exit, completely ignoring Peterson, who was still trying to officially close the hearing. "The session is anyone listening to me?" Anyone? Nobody was. Outside City Hall, the Seattle night sparkled with the city lights. Nora stopped on the steps and took a deep breath. The cold air filled her lungs, and for the first time in months, she didn't feel the weight of the world on her shoulders. Elias stopped beside her. "Thank you," she said, without looking at him. "For what? For fixing your mistake?" "It was the least I could do. It was more than most would do." They stood in silence for a moment, watching the Greenwood residents descend the stairs in celebration. "So," Elias finally said, "we're going to work together." "Seems like it. Do you still want to punch me?" Nora considered the question, just a little bit. "I can live with that." She finally looked at him. And despite everything, despite the anger, the confusion, the whirlwind of emotions, she smiled. "Don't push your luck, Montgomery." "Never, Sullivan." And as they descended the stairs together, Nora realized something she didn't expect. For the first time in a long while, she was excited about the future, even if that future included the most complicated man she had ever met. The meeting table at the community center had never seen so much tension over a paint color. Nora held a teal-blue sample as if it were the most precious thing in the world. Elias held a charcoal-gray sample with the conviction of someone defending a noble cause. Between them, a cardboard mock-up of the revitalization project awaited its fate. "Blue," Nora said. "Gray," Elias said. "Blue conveys warmth. Gray conveys sophistication. This is a community center, not a law office. Law firms use black. Gray is sustainable technology." Nora narrowed her eyes. "Are you trying to turn my center into a commercial for your company?" "I'm trying to keep it from looking like an aquarium." "Aquariums are cool. For fish." Tessa, sitting in the corner of the room pretending to work, raised her hand. "Can I suggest a third option?" "No," they both said at the same time. She lowered her hand. "Got it. Continue the marriage." "It's not a marriage," Nora protested. "It's a professional discussion," Elias completed. "Professional discussion about blue and gray. That's lasted 40 minutes. Tessa went back to looking at the computer. Totally normal. 5 days had passed since the hearing. 5 days of meetings, planning, and discussions about every detail of the revitalization project. 5 days of Nora and Elias working side by side, trying to pretend there wasn't a strange electricity in the air every time they got too close. They were failing miserably. "Look," Nora said, placing the paint sample on the table, "we can settle this in a civilized way." "I'm listening." "Vote. The community decides." Elias considered. "Fair, but if they choose gray..." "They won't choose gray." "You don't know that. I've known this community for 12 years. They're not going to choose the color of a hospital. Gray isn't hospital color. Hospitals use white. Gray is white that gave up on living." Elias opened his mouth, closed it, and for a second it looked like he was going to laugh. He held back at the last instant. "You're impossible," he said. "Thank you. I practice." Jade appeared at the door carrying coffee and skepticism. "Still fighting over the color?" "We're not fighting," Elias said. "We're debating," Nora completed. "Debating, of course." Jade distributed the cups. "I brought decaf for both of you. You clearly don't need more energy." Nora took the coffee and took a sip. "This isn't decaf." "No, but the faces you made were worth the lie." Elias stared at her. "You just admitted you lied." "I work for a CEO. Adapting the truth is part of the package." "It's not. It should be. It would make everything more efficient." Tessa from across the room raised her own cup. "I like her." Jade smiled. "The feeling is mutual." Nora looked from one to the other. "Why does it feel like you're plotting something?" "Because we are," Jade said simply. "But don't worry, it's for your own good." "That's scary." "It's efficiency." Similar words. After coffee, they returned to the mock-up. Elias leaned over the table to point out a detail in the technology area. Nora leaned in to see better. And, without meaning to, their hands landed on the same spot on the paper. The touch was brief, maybe half a second. but it was enough to make them both freeze. "Sorry," Nora said, pulling her hand back. "No, I was just looking." "Me too." They stared at each other. The air became strangely charged. Tessa coughed, loudly, very loudly. "I'm going to get more coffee," she announced, standing up. "Jade, come with me?" "I just brought coffee." "Then let's get cookies." "We don't have cookies." "Let's buy cookies." "The nearest store is." Tessa pulled her by the arm. "Let's go, now." The two left, leaving Nora and Elias alone with a cardboard mock-up and attention nobody had asked for. "So," Nora said, trying to seem casual, "the technology area." "Yes, the technology area." "You were saying something about computers." "Was I?" "I don't know. You were pointing." "Oh yes." Elias looked at the mock-up as if seeing it for the first time. "I was thinking we could have a programming room for teenagers, teach skills that can become careers." Nora relaxed a bit. Work was safe territory. "That's actually a good idea." "You sound surprised." "I am surprised. Your ideas usually involve more gray." "This one doesn't involve gray." "That's why it's a good idea." Elias rolled his eyes, but he was smiling. They worked in silence for a few minutes. It was strange, Nora thought, how silence with him wasn't uncomfortable. With most people, silence meant awkwardness. With Elias, it just meant being together, which was disturbing for reasons she refused to analyze. "Can I ask you something?" Elias said suddenly. "Depends on the question. Are you still angry with me?" Nora stopped writing. The question was too direct to ignore. "I don't know," she admitted. "Sometimes yes, sometimes no." "Fair. You lied to me." "I omitted." "Which is a type of lie." "I know." He sighed. "I wanted to tell you, that night at dinner after you talked about the center, I wanted to tell the truth." "Why didn't you?" "Because you were going to hate me, and I didn't want you to hate me." Nora studied him. He seemed genuinely sorry, not the rehearsed kind that rich men did when they got caught. The real kind. The kind that weighed on the chest. "I don't hate you," she finally said. "You don't?" "No. But I still don't know if I trust you." Elias nodded. "That's more than I deserved." "Probably. You don't make things easy, you know that?" "Why would I make it easy?" He laughed. A low, surprised laugh. "Fair. Very fair." Tessa and Jade returned 40 minutes later, carrying cookies they had clearly bought just to have an excuse. "We're back," Tessa announced. "We brought supplies." "You took almost an hour," Nora observed. "The line was long." "What line? The store is 2 blocks away." "A spiritual line of reflection about cookies." Jade nodded solemnly. "Very philosophical." Nora and Elias exchanged glances, the kind of look that said, they think we don't notice what they're doing. But neither commented. By the end of the day, the mock-up was almost complete. The technology area had space for 20 computers. The art room had large windows for natural light. The community garden had spiral-shaped beds. And the wall color still hadn't been decided. "Vote tomorrow," Nora said, putting away the materials. "The community decides." "Agreed. And when they choose blue, you can't complain. When they choose gray, you can't either." "They won't choose gray. You're very confident." "I'm realistic." Elias grabbed his own briefcase and walked to the door. He stopped, his hand on the doorknob. "Nora?" "Yes?" He hesitated. It seemed like he wanted to say something more, something important. But the words didn't come. "See you tomorrow," he finally said. "See you tomorrow." The door closed. Nora stood still, looking at the empty space he had left. "Are you okay?" Tessa asked. "I am." "You're making a face like you're not." "A face like what?" "Like someone who's falling for the wrong guy and trying to pretend they're not." Nora opened her mouth to deny it, closed it, opened it again. "I'm not falling for him." "Okay, I'm not." "I believe you. You're being sarcastic." "Totally. But with love." On the other side of town, Elias got in the car and sat in the parking lot for 10 minutes. Jade, in the passenger seat, pretended to check emails. "How long are you going to sit there?" "As long as I need to." "Need to for what?" "To process." "Process what?" "The fact that you're completely in love with her and don't have the courage to say it." Elias stared at her. "I'm not." "Elias, I've known you for 6 years. You've never argued over a paint color in your life. You don't care about colors. You once approved an entire office in beige because whatever." He had no arguments. "She still doesn't trust me," he said quietly. "So what?" "What do you mean, so what?" "Trust is important. Trust is built. You're building it." "And if I can't?" Jade sighed. "Then at least you tried." But something tells me she's as scared as you are. Elias looked out the window. The Seattle lights sparkled on the horizon. You think so? I know so. Women know these things. That's a stereotype. It's a universal truth. Now start this car before I freeze. That night, on opposite sides of the city, two people stared at the ceiling, unable to sleep. Thinking about the same thing, the same person, and the terrible fear that what they felt was too real to ignore. The vote for the color had begun, and to the surprise of both Elias and Nora, the community chose green. Not blue. Not gray. Emerald green, to be exact. A suggestion from Sophia that won unanimously because, according to her, green is the color of plants, and plants are cool. Nora and Elias stood side by side, staring at the voting results as if they'd been collectively slapped. Green, Nora said. Green, Elias repeated. We argued for 40 minutes over nothing. Technically, we debated. We debated over nothing. Sophia walked past them with a victorious smile. Adults complicate everything. You should have just asked the kids from the start. Miss Martha, behind her, shrugged. She has a point. A week after the historic vote, the renovation was officially underway. Workers came and went, walls gained new life, and the community center buzzed with activity. Nora and Elias had fallen into a strange routine of working together. Meetings in the morning, inspections in the afternoon, discussions about details at the end of the day. It was productive. It was professional. It was absolutely maddening. Because every time their eyes met, the air got heavier. Every time their hands almost touched, Nora's heart raced. And every time Elias smiled, that restrained smile that seemed reserved just for her, Nora temporarily forgot how to form sentences. Tessa had started taking notes, literally. In a little notebook. What are you writing? Nora asked one afternoon. Nothing. Tessa, scientific research about unresolved romantic tension. You two are a fascinating case study. I'm going to burn that notebook. I have a cloud backup. On Friday, the storm arrived. The Seattle sky darkened at 5 in the afternoon as if someone had turned off the sun. By 6, the rain began. Not regular rain, but the kind that made it seem like the entire ocean was falling from the sky. Tessa left at 5:30, before the worst started. See you Monday. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. What does that mean? Elias asked. It means she's giving us permission for basically everything, Nora murmured. At 7, when they tried to leave, the parking lot was flooded. At 7:15, all of Seattle lost power. At 7:30, Nora and Elias were officially trapped. Well, Nora said, looking out the window at the downpour, this wasn't on the schedule. Elias checked his phone. Jade says the forecast is 3 more hours of storm. The electric company has no timeline for restoring power. So we're stuck here. Seems like it. Alone. Apparently. In the dark. Technically, I have my phone flashlight. Nora stared at him. Are you trying to be funny? I'm trying not to freak out. Humor helps. They found flashlights in the supply closet, 4 to be exact, all working by some miracle. Nora turned one on and lit up the main room. Shadows danced on the freshly painted green walls, creating strange shapes. Looks like a horror movie, she observed. Or an adventure. You're too optimistic. You're too pessimistic. I'm realistic. Realistic, pessimistic. Nora pointed the flashlight at his face. Careful, Montgomery. I have the light source. I have the power here. Elias raised his own flashlight. Now we're on equal footing. Is that a threat? It's a negotiation. They sat on the floor of the art room, backs against the wall, flashlights between them, creating a circle of light in the middle of the darkness. The rain beat against the windows like insistent music. The wind howled outside, and inside the silence was almost palpable. You know what we could do? Nora said. What? Shadow theater. Elias frowned. Shadow theater? Yeah, with your hands. On the wall. She positioned the flashlight and made a vague shape with her fingers. Look. A dog. Elias tilted his head. It looks more like a camel with spine problems. It's an artistic dog. It's an artistic disaster. Then do better. Elias grabbed his flashlight and positioned his hands with excessive care. The result was a shape that didn't look like anything recognizable at all. What is that? Nora asked. A rabbit? Where are the ears? They're conceptual ears. Nora burst out laughing. Conceptual ears don't exist. They exist on my rabbit. Your rabbit looks like a potato with depression. Elias tried to keep his composure, but laughter escaped. Low at first, then looser. Nora joined in, and for a moment the two of them sat there laughing at poorly made shadows while the storm roared outside. When the laughter subsided, the silence that remained was different. Softer, more intimate. "Can I tell you something?" Elias said, his voice low. "Depends on what it is. I've never done this before." Shadow theater? Being stuck in a storm with someone. He paused. Being stuck anywhere with someone, actually. My life has always been very controlled. Schedules, meetings, appointments, everything planned months in advance. Nora watched him. The flashlight made soft shadows on his face, softening the angles, revealing something more vulnerable underneath. "That sounds lonely," she said. "It is." He didn't hesitate. "It's very lonely, even surrounded by people, even in crowded meetings, even at events with hundreds of people. I've always felt alone, like I was on the outside of a window, looking at a party I wasn't part of." Nora's heart tightened. "Doesn't money help?" Elias laughed, but the sound was sad. "Money complicates things. You never know if people like you or what you can give them. After a while, you stop trying to figure it out. It's easier to stay alone than to risk it." The rain kept falling. The wind kept howling. But inside, something had changed. "I'm afraid to trust," Nora said suddenly. Elias looked at her. "After my father left, after watching my mother destroy herself trying to hold everything together alone, I learned that people leave, always, so it's better not to expect them to stay." "That's very sad. It's reality. It doesn't have to be." Nora turned her face to look at him. He was closer than she'd realized, or maybe she had moved closer without noticing. "How do you know?" "I don't know. But I want to believe that some people stay. The right ones, the ones who are worth it. And if they don't stay, then at least you tried. At least you really lived, instead of just watching through the window." The silence stretched. The flashlights created their own world around them, a cocoon of light in the middle of the darkness. Nora realized she was holding her breath. "Elias." "Yes?" "What are we doing?" He didn't answer with words. Instead, he raised his hand and touched her face. A light touch, almost a question. Nora closed her eyes. When his lips met hers, it was as if the storm outside had gone silent, as if the entire world had stopped to make room for that moment. The kiss was soft at first, hesitant, two people too afraid of hurting or being hurt. But then it was as if all the barriers they had built simply crumbled. Nora felt tears in her eyes and didn't know if they were from joy or fear or relief, maybe all three. When they separated, they stayed with their foreheads touching, breathing the same air. "That was," she began. "Yes," he agreed. "We should. Probably." But neither of them moved. And outside, as if the universe was approving, the rain began to ease. Monday arrived with sun, clear skies, and two adults acting like teenagers who don't know what to do after their first kiss. Nora arrived at the community center at 8 in the morning. Elias was already there, pretending to examine a plant in the corner of the room as if it were the most fascinating object in the universe. "Hi," she said. "Hi," he responded without taking his eyes off the plant. "That plant is plastic." "I know. How long have you been looking at it?" "Since you walked in." "That's 3 seconds. 3 very intense seconds." Tessa noticed in approximately 12 minutes. "What happened?" she asked, appearing beside Nora with the subtlety of an elephant in a china shop. "Nothing." "Liar. You're both acting strange." "We're not." He greeted the plastic plant when he arrived. "The plant, Nora," he said good morning to it. "Maybe he likes plants." "It's plastic." "Plastic plants deserve respect too." Tessa narrowed her eyes. "Something happened the night of the storm." "Nothing happened. You were stuck here for hours, alone, in the dark." "So what?" "We worked." "Worked?" "Yes. In the dark." With flashlight, Tessa crossed her arms. "Nora Sullivan, if you don't tell me what happened, I'm going to find out on my own. And when I do, I'm going to be much more dramatic than if you just told me now." Nora opened her mouth to deny it again, closed it, sighed. "We kissed." Tessa's scream was probably heard in 3 different states. Jade arrived at the community center at 10, as had become routine in recent weeks. She found Elias in the meeting room, smiling at the project mock-up as if it had told him a joke. "You're smiling," she said, dropping her purse on the chair. "I'm not." "Yes, you are, and you're smiling at the mock-up, which is cardboard." Elias adjusted a non-existent piece. "I'm happy with the project's progress." "You're never happy with project progress. You're satisfied. Content. at most adequately impressed. Jade sat in the chair across from him. A smile like that is something else. You're imagining things. I'm imagining that you were stuck here in the storm, with her, in the dark, for hours. Jade tilted her head. You kissed. It wasn't a question. Elias tried to keep his expression neutral, failed completely. Jade threw her hands up. Finally! I was going crazy watching you two. At lunchtime, Tessa and Jade met in the hallway. What happened next was an exchange of information so fast and efficient, it seemed rehearsed. Did she confess? Jade asked. At 9:12, you? 10:15. He tried to deny it for 3 minutes. She did too, very amateur. When do you think they'll make it official? 1 week. 2 at most. I bet 10 days. Deal. Nora appeared at the end of the hallway and saw the two talking. She stopped. What are you doing? Networking, they said at the same time. Networking. Between assistants and best friends, Tessa explained. It's a very important professional category. You're making bets about me and Elias. Jade didn't even bother denying it. The question is, when will you make it official? We don't even know what we are yet. 2 people who kissed during a storm and now can't look at each other without smiling like idiots. Tessa counted on her fingers. That has a name. It starts with dat and ends with ing. You're both impossible. We're efficient. They're different things. In the afternoon, when Nora and Elias finally were alone in the meeting room, the tension was almost palpable. So, Nora said. So, Elias repeated. We should talk about the kiss. Yeah. Silence. It was a good kiss, Elias finally said. Nora felt her face heat up. It was. But it complicates things. It does. We work together. We do. And the project is important. Very important. More silence. But I want to do it again, he said quietly. Nora looked up. What? The kiss. I want to do it again, if you want to. She opened her mouth to answer, but the door burst open. Margot Pierce entered as if the place belonged to her. What a lovely scene, Margot said, her eyes sweeping the room. The CEO and his project coordinator. Elias stood up. What are you doing here, Margot? I came to bring news. The board met yesterday, extraordinarily. She smiled, the kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes. We're reviewing the decision about the community center funding. Nora felt the floor disappear. You can't do that, she said. It's documented, approved, underway. Documents can be reviewed, approvals can be revoked, especially when the CEO is clearly making decisions based on personal interests. Margot, Elias said, his voice dangerously calm. Be careful what you're implying. I'm not implying anything. I'm observing facts. She took a step forward. The board wants a complete audit of the project. If we find any irregularities, any conflict of interest, the funding will be cut. When Margot left, Nora let herself fall into a chair. Can she do that? She asked. She can try. Elias sat beside her. But the project is clean. There are no irregularities. There's no conflict of interest. There is now. We kissed Elias. If they find out, there's nothing wrong with 2 people meeting during a project. For her there is. She's going to use this against us. Elias took her hand, a small gesture, but one that said a lot. Then we face it together. Nora looked at him. Together? Together. You and me, as a team. He paused. As more than a team, if you want. Is this a relationship proposal in the middle of a corporate crisis? It's the only kind of proposal I know how to make, apparently. Despite everything, the threat, the fear, the uncertainty, Nora laughed. You're ridiculous. Is that a yes? It's a let's survive this first and then we'll talk. Can I consider it a probably yes? You can consider it a shut up and kiss me before I change my mind. Elias didn't need to hear it twice. Tessa and Jade returned together 10 minutes later. They had clearly planned the timing. They found Nora and Elias holding hands, analyzing documents with the determination of 2 lawyers before a trial. Okay, Jade said slowly. What happened? You're too serious for people who just got together. Margot is trying to take down the project, Elias summarized. And you're holding hands because we also decided to date, Nora completed. Tessa blinked, then blinked again. Wait, both things at the same time? Crisis and dating? Efficiency, Elias said. Jade and Tessa exchanged glances. I like them together, Jade decided. They're crazy, but they work, Tessa agreed. Who won the bet? Nora asked. Nobody. You were faster than we expected. They worked until midnight, reviewing every document, every contract, every comma in the project. When they finished, They had a complete file against any accusation Margot could invent. And they had something more, a certainty that didn't exist before. "Ready for tomorrow?" Elias asked at the center's door. "No," Nora smiled, "but I'm going anyway. That's what I admire most about you. My stubbornness, your courage." He kissed her, softer this time, but no less meaningful. And Nora realized that, for the first time in a long while, she wasn't afraid anymore. Not of trusting, not of falling, not of loving. Tomorrow would be a battle, but at least it wouldn't be alone. The audit lasted 3 weeks. 3 weeks of reviewed documents, tense meetings, and Margot Pierce scouring every penny of the project as if she'd find hidden gold. She found nothing. Not a comma out of place, not a penny unexplained, not a shadow of irregularity. The final report arrived on a rainy Tuesday, and Elias read it aloud to Nora, Jade, and Tessa in the community center's meeting room. Project in full compliance with corporate and municipal guidelines. No evidence of conflict of interest. Recommendation: proceed as planned. Tessa let out a scream that probably scared birds within a 3-kilometer radius. "We won." "Technically, we didn't do anything wrong to begin with," Nora observed. "Details. A win is a win." Jade was already on her phone. "I'm sending the report to all board members, with a copy to Margot, in bold." "That's petty," Elias said. "That's poetic justice." Jade smiled. Similar words. Margot Pierce resigned from the board 2 weeks later. Officially, it was to pursue new professional challenges. Unofficially, everyone knew she had lost the war and preferred to leave before being pushed. Nora heard the news from Jade, who showed up at the center with non-alcoholic champagne and a smile that wouldn't fit on her face. "She's gone," Jade announced. "Cleared her desk last night. Didn't even say goodbye." That's... wow. Nora didn't know exactly what to feel. Is it over? It's over. The project is safe, the funding is guaranteed, and you two can date in peace without anyone trying to turn it into a corporate scandal. Elias appeared at the door, clearly already knowing the news from his relieved expression. "So," he said, looking at Nora, "looks like we survived. Looks like we did. What do we do now?" Nora smiled. "Now we build." 6 months later, the Greenwood Community Center had never looked so beautiful. The emerald green walls gleamed under the September sun. The community garden bloomed with tomatoes, sunflowers, and aromatic herbs. The technology room had 20 new computers, all occupied by teenagers learning programming. And the mural on the side of the building, painted by the neighborhood children themselves, showed hands of all colors holding the planet. The opening festival had attracted the entire neighborhood. Food stands occupied the street, closed to traffic. Live music played on a small makeshift stage. Children ran everywhere, and the smell of Miss Martha's barbecue spread through the air. Tessa was in the middle of it all, coordinating volunteers with the efficiency of a general. More napkins at stand 3. Who took the microphone? "Sophia, get down from there now!" Sophia, balanced on a chair to see the stage better, stuck out her tongue. "I'm supervising. You're 8 years old. 8 very experienced years." Nora watched it all from a corner, her heart overflowing. It had worked. Everything had worked. The center was standing. The neighborhood was alive. And she, for the first time in years, wasn't fighting anyone. Wasn't running to put out fires. Wasn't holding the world on her shoulders alone. It was a strange feeling. Good, but strange. "You're making that face again," said a voice behind her. Nora turned. Elias was there, handsome in jeans and a casual shirt, very different from the suited man she had met at a pretentious restaurant months ago. "What face?" "The face of someone who doesn't believe it worked out. Because I still don't believe it." She looked around. All of this seemed impossible, and now it's here. Real. Working. Elias took her hand. "You made this happen. We made it happen. You started it. I just showed up in the middle and tried not to get in the way." Nora laughed. "You got in the way quite a bit at first." "I know, but I got better." "You got better a little." "Only a little?" "I don't want to inflate your ego." At 4 in the afternoon, someone cut the music. Nora frowned. That wasn't on the schedule. "What's happening?" she asked Tessa, who had appeared beside her with a suspiciously innocent expression. "Nothing." "Tessa." "Absolutely nothing. Look, I think someone wants to speak on stage." Nora turned. Elias was climbing the steps of the makeshift stage, with a microphone in his hand and his legs visibly shaking. "Hi," Elias said into the microphone. The sound echoed down the street, and all conversations stopped. "Sorry to interrupt. I just need a minute." Nora felt her heart race. "What is he doing?" "Shh," Tessa said. "Watch." On stage, Elias seemed to be having a small existential crisis. He looked at the paper in his hand, then at the crowd, then at the paper again. "I prepared a speech," he began. "It had beautiful phrases, literary references, a Shakespeare quote I thought was elegant." He crumpled the paper and tossed it aside. "But that's not me, and the person I want to talk to deserves the truth, not a rehearsed script." Jade, somewhere in the crowd, shouted, "Get on with it, Elias!" Scattered laughter. Elias took a deep breath. 8 months ago, I walked into a restaurant thinking I was going to a networking meeting. I found a woman at the wrong table who criticized the food, laughed at my attempts to seem impressive, and made me spill water on my own lap. More laughter. Nora felt her face burn. That night, I didn't know she was going to change my life. I didn't know she was going to make me question everything I thought was important. I didn't know she was going to show me what it really means to care about something, about someone. He came down from the stage and started walking toward Nora. The crowd opened up like the Red Sea. "Nora Sullivan, you're the most stubborn, brave, and annoyingly right person I've ever met." "Annoyingly?" she repeated, her voice failing. "Annoyingly, because you're always right, and that's very inconvenient for my ego." He stopped in front of her, and then, to Nora's absolute shock, he knelt down. The silence was total. Not even the children made noise, which was practically a miracle. Elias pulled a small box from his pocket. His hands were shaking so much he almost dropped it. "I'm not perfect," he said. "I make mistakes. I shut down. I sometimes still say good morning to plastic plants when I'm nervous." "That's true," Jade confirmed from somewhere. "I saw it. But with you, I want to be better, every day, for the rest of my life." He opened the box. A simple, elegant ring gleamed inside. "Nora Sullivan, will you marry me?" Nora couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything but look at this absurd, irritating, wonderful man, kneeling in front of her with a ring and his heart exposed. "You're proposing to me," she said. "In the middle of the festival, in front of everyone." "I am. This is very dramatic." "I know, and very public. I know. What if I said no? Then it would be very embarrassing, but I'd risk it." Nora felt the tears coming, not sad tears, tears from something so big it didn't fit inside her. "You're ridiculous," she said. "Is that a yes?" She took a deep breath. "It's a yes, you fool." The crowd erupted in applause. Elias stood up so fast he almost tripped. Nora jumped into his arms, and the kiss that followed made Miss Martha cover Sophia's eyes. "I can see. I'm 8 years old, not a baby." "You are a baby." Tessa was crying so loud she could barely speak. "I always knew it would work out." Jade, beside her, was also wiping her eyes. "You literally bet they'd take longer." "Lies. I didn't know, but I'm happy anyway." When they finally separated, Elias put the ring on Nora's finger. "It fit," he said, relieved. "You didn't know the size?" "Jade found out. Don't ask me how." "I have my methods," Jade shouted from afar, "and a very good relationship with jewelers." Sophia appeared out of nowhere, tugging at the hem of Nora's shirt. "I'm going to be the flower girl, right?" Nora looked down. "Sophia, we just got engaged. We haven't even set a date yet." "But I'm going to be the flower girl. Is that a question or a demand?" "It's a demand. I practice throwing flowers. I'm very good." Elias laughed. "I think you have a flower girl." "I think I don't have a choice." Sophia smiled, satisfied. Adults are slow, but they learn. The festival continued into the evening. There was more music, more food, more laughter. Miss Martha made a special engagement cake that miraculously wasn't burnt. Her husband swore it was a sign of good luck, and when the stars began to appear in the Seattle sky, Nora and Elias were sitting on the community center steps watching the neighborhood they had saved together. "So," Elias said, "what comes next?" Nora rested her head on his shoulder. "Now, we live." "That's it." She smiled. "Together." Elias kissed the top of her head. And there, under the festival lights and the Seattle stars, two substitutes who were never supposed to meet began the next chapter of a story neither of them expected to live. But that neither of them would trade for anything in the world. The end. If you were in Nora's place at that first dinner, would you have stayed or run away? Leave your opinion in the comments. On a scale of 0 to 10, what score would you give this story? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to receive more exciting stories like this one. See you in the next one.